how nice it is out there? Look at that. It's like green and shit. It looks like a real life out there. And I can feel the breeze coming in. We're gonna ignore all of it and play video games. Don't get cocky, kid. Where's the wave? Here it comes. Here it comes. It's all over the goddamn. Hello everybody, welcome to the stream today. Obviously, you guys are here because today is going to be the Diablo 4 interview with Blizzard's own Adam Jackson. We spent yesterday going through both Riker and Rex's questions, so we're not going to be double dipping and doing the same ones that they did yesterday because they've already been answered. So shout out to Rex for sending over some of his leftover questions, Riker with the same. And then my co-host Gazi and me spent this morning kind of going through and retuning some of the questions as well. We also have a rapid fire section that is a whole bunch of questions that we have seen repeatedly be brought up by basically the chat and people that leave comments, etc. So we're going to try to get through all of the questions today. I know it's a rather short interview. So for the people that aren't aware of what's going on, I'm just going to give you a quick filler on what exactly is going on. So they are doing sort of their first round of interviews. If you haven't seen any of the other ones, Blizzard has started going onto fellow content creators' channels to do live interviews in which you can ask questions primarily about Season 4, but be in Diablo in general, philosophy behind design principles, and some specific questions as well. The interview starts at 1 p.m. PST, which is in approximately 1 hour from now. We do have a pretty decent amount of questions in the rapid fire section, but if there is anything in particular you guys really want to see, and it's a good question, then me and my co-host Gazi, who will join us shortly before the start of the podcast, or interview, I suppose this one is. This is more of an interview than a podcast. We're not really going to be having as many conversations as much as us asking questions. I see people saying the mic needs to go up. I can boost it slightly for you guys. That's easy enough. You can feel free to leave them in the chat, and if we see a whole bunch of those, then we will do our best to get them added in as well. How's the audio levels on my end of things? Let's make sure that we have audio levels are fine and all that to start. Go ahead and put in both chats. I do have both chats open, both YouTube and Twitch. So are we good? How's the quality? Everyone can see everything. You guys were able to hear the intro, so therefore the audio is working. Everything sound good on your guys' end of it? Great audio, thanks. Peaking. A little sharp. Okay. Can fix that. It should fix that a little bit there. Remove the threshold a bit. Attenuation. How is that? Does that work a little bit better for you guys? Should be slightly better there. Ask why we have to load every player's stash items. I'm going to try to stick to questions that are going to provide useful bits of information or things that could potentially come to the game. We're not really going to ask a lot of questions that don't really do anything for the player base at the moment, if that makes sense. So we're not going to ask, like, when do we get another stash tab? Questions like that are pretty much going to be avoided. And we're going to be trying to ask more like, hey, what is either the development process behind this, or what is the potential for updates related to this, etc. I won't spoil all the questions that we're going to have. But we're going to try to avoid useless questions as much as possible, basically, as some of them can not be so useful. With that being said, if for the people that saw Riker and Rex's interview, you guys like the interviews? I watched both of them. They seemed pretty good interviews. Looks like Riker gave us more of like design philosophy. Rex kind of had more particulars about, gameplay type of stuff, it seemed like. How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. Not live on Twitch today. We're live on both platforms, YouTube as well. So you could be able to see both of them in 1 hour, 5 minutes from now, correct? Do they plan on adding raids or raid mechanics to bosses? So this is one that has kind of come up significantly, and we do actually have raids in the rapid fire portion. So towards the end of this, what we're going to attempt to do is shoot off a whole bunch of these. I think we have like 15 to 20 questions. We have like 6 major questions we're going to try to get answered, which were our primary ones. And then we have a rapid fire, which is like everything from like PvP, solo self-found, raids, map overlays, filters, like all of the questions that people are consistently spam asking over and over again. We do have that under the rapid fire portion. So if there are some of your questions that you guys are curious about seeing that you haven't seen in some of the others, if we can have enough time and get to the rapid fire portion, more than likely one of your common questions will be in that rapid fire portion. Yes, it is in 1 hour, correct. Shout out to Woody's in the chat. When's the interview? Yeah, 1 hour, Woody. I see some other questions in here talking about skill tree. Skill tree was done on the previous interview with Rax, though we do ask some non-skill tree related build questions today, yeah. So like I was saying, we're not going to be double dipping on questions that were already primarily answered within the other interviews. We're going to try to only do new things. We're going third. We're the last of the interviews, me and Ghazi. So because of that, a lot of the questions have already been answered. So if there is some of these, like to give you an idea, let me pull like a common one, right, that went through previously, like asking about the Nightmare Dungeons, Pinnacle content, or like the roadmap, for instance. Those would have been answered in Rax's interview, so we're not going to ask those again. So if you think like, oh, there seems like to be some major questions that weren't asked, like when is an armory coming? Like that's probably in the previous interview. So just check those other interviews. Shout out to those ones as well. If you don't see the question that you're super interested in, they might have been in the previous ones, which is why we didn't ask it. Intro's nice. Oh, thanks, man. That shout out to Jim Tindo for putting together the intros. That's my editor. Can you ask them if they would add black dye? We actually do have a question related to some transmog related questions, which are, to be fair, transmogs are at the bottom of the list. I think people care more about gameplay mechanics, etc., than they care about like transmog type of questions. But we do have one of the questions that came up, the chat was asking, was like a hex wheel or more color chromas, etc., for transmog. So that's all the way at the bottom of the list. But if we do get to that time, then we will be asking about, can we get like a color wheel, for instance, around transmog. So that is actually in the rapid fire portion. Scale Paragon loadouts, that would have already been answered in Rex's previous interview, which would have been yesterday, and I'd recommend checking out his interview for that one, because they talk about the armory system. And to just give you a pseudo answer, and what the answer on that was, is basically, we like that, but we can't talk about it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I don't know if that means it's coming in the expansion or something, but it seems like the potential was there. What is their vision for PvP? So PvP was a highly debated topic. It was very split. About half of you guys did not want us to use interview time on PvP related question. The other half was very much like, hey, I only play the game for PvP. I understand and acknowledge there's a PvP community within this game that would like answers towards PvP. So what we did is we added PvP question, like what's the plan around PvP and development of it, to the rapid fire portion. It didn't get one of the primary slots for the questions, because all of the questions, we didn't even ask stuff about classes we want to know. I don't have any questions in there around things that I personally wanted to know. They're all things that can apply to every player, regardless of what class you're playing, regardless if you're console or PC, or how you play the game. We're going for questions that apply to the majority of people. So I'm not going to ask, like, what's the plan with Druid companions? I would love to know, but that's not in there. So PvP is one of those questions that has a community that plays it, but is not like the best prep for it now. Ghazi will join us shortly before the interview. And then we will have a few moments in which we'll probably actually go for an audio test about 15 minutes before the hour. And that way we can make sure we have the audio and everything set up. It'll be on a holding screen, and then we'll pop up the interview, and then we'll go from there. I do see a question related to legendary gems, charms, paladin, Diablo, in Diablo 4, pit leaderboard, runes, and achievements. So the pit stuff was already covered. The paladin, etc., that is related to potentially the expansion, right? Because there's a new class coming with expansion. It's already been talked about, so they can't talk about new classes. So that one we're not able to cover because they're not talking about expansion information today. Legendary gems and charms, we sort of have pseudo answered in our question, or pseudo asked in the upcoming question. One of the questions we will be asking is around further development and progression of characters outside of only the skill tree, as the skill tree specifically was answered in the previous interview. So we are trying to ask about that stuff today as well. PvP is the tried and true in-game for the genre. For certain people. Let's see, what else do we have here? Mercenaries plan or considered. We do have a question related to pets/followers in the rapid fire portion, as pets do seem to come up pretty often. When does the interview start? Top of the hour. Expansion price. They're not going to be talking about shop or price related things today. Room words. Room words were covered in a previous interview with Riker. So that one has already been discussed. If we get into the rapid fire portion, then we can for sure spend a little bit of time trying to dig deeper into that, but that has been asked. And keep in mind, this is a very short interview. This is only 45 minutes is what we have available to us. So because of the 45 minutes that we have available, we have to ask as many honed questions as we can and then get into the rapid fire, which will be a little bit quicker, hopefully. So we aren't able to get all of the questions today. So if there's some that people are wanting to see that you don't get, I'm sorry. For instance, I see many questions about the Cal level. That's in the rapid fire portion, but we don't have meme questions in here. Like, I'm not going to ask him, have you heard of the, D4 bad radio, YouTube? Like, we're not going to ask useless questions. We're trying to ask mostly things that can apply to most players at most levels, basically, or at least try to have the opportunity to have an answer with new information. That is our primary focus of the day. And keep in mind, normally, me and Ghazi with these Tavern Talks, these are podcasts, like the one we did with PoE, for instance, was almost 3 hours. We don't have that amount of time. So this is going to be a lot less of give and take of me talking with the person and more so me and Ghazi going back and forth, shooting like, here's my question, here's his question, and then listening to the answers, acknowledging the answers, then hitting again with the next question. We have 6 primary questions we would like to get through this evening, and then after that, we have like over a dozen secondary questions, if we get to, will be in there. To ask specifically about the Cal level, as I'm seeing a million of those, the Cal level is in the rapid fire portion, but that's a meme question. Like, the no dev has ever even referred to the existence of the Cal level in any Diablo game, as far as I'm aware, so it's an ongoing joke that if you ask them, they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no Cal level. So therefore, it's sort of a useless use of time for the people that are watching this interview today. So for that reason, we're not really going to spend a lot of time diving into the Cal level. Group Finder, they didn't really answer racks about it. So questions that were asked but not answered in the depth of which the audience would have enjoyed will not be reiterated upon, because we've already had the opportunity to see what they would answer that with. If they didn't have an answer available for Group Finder, and I ask them again literally the day after, the same person who was just asked about Group Finder, he's going to give us the same answer. Nothing has changed within 24 hours of his previous answer. It would be a misuse of our opportunity of time here. So for that reason, like I've mentioned previously, questions such as Group Finder, in which we didn't get a satisfactory answer to your liking, will not be re-asked, as we already know how they would choose to answer it. Any bosses getting quality of life changes for Season 4? We do have a question related to world bosses here, which we could dive into a little bit. Skill tree expansion. This was covered in Rax's interview, which I would recommend watching from yesterday. What about the gold level / puzzle ring / D3? We do have that specific question within the rapid fire portion. Yes, actually. Why are all the devs doing interviews with streamers all of a sudden this time? They're probably on a promotional run. If I had to guess, the expansion is coming. I believe it's coming this year. And Season 4 is sort of a rework, a reborn of the game is the word they're using for it. They're hitting up all of the content creators to talk about it. It would make sense. They're also probably trying to communicate better, as they do seem to be trying to listen to the feedback. And one of the feedbacks that the devs have had is that people would like more communication within the game. So I think it's a two-handed of it's a promotional run, which I don't have any problems doing, being someone who could use the interview, as well as they are trying to go under the feedback that we have been giving them about communicate more to the audience. I think, yeah, it's a win-win. That's how I see it anyway. Bag stash size. So I addressed this earlier. We're not going to be talking about stash size today, or asking about stash tabs, as this is one that is so well known of an issue that has been talked about and done feedback on and been represented multiple times in multiple live streams so far. So because of that, it would be a misuse of our time today to talk about stash tabs. We already know it's a dev technical limitation behind of it. They've added one new stash tabs, and more than likely, if I had to guess, the answer to that would be, well, we know we need new stash tabs, but we did just limit the amount of loot being dropped with this new loot reborn system. We also have the Codex of Power, which is now more quality of life, meaning your items are stored there, meaning there will be less inventory use for you, so you're kind of pseudo getting more stash space. That, I assume, would be the answer, which is the same question, the same reason one of our primary questions today will not be about loot filters. They will be in the rapid fire portion if we get there, because I do believe we would acquire the same answer from them if we asked about stash storage and loot filter, are kind of going to get the same answer. The same answer would be, well, with Loot Reborn, there will be a significant reduction in the amount of things you have to store, and I assume that would be the answer, therefore it would be a misuse of time at the moment. So we're going to go with other questions. It is a good question, however, just not for the very limited amount of time we have currently. Okay, good. They addressed loot filters in a video the other day. True, actually. Hardcore SSF and other game modes being looked at? Yes, I do like that question, Henry. That is in the rapid fire portion. It is at the top of the rapid fire portion. My logic behind asking SSF modes is I know it doesn't appeal to everybody, but with trading becoming larger in Diablo 4 now, with legendaries being able to be a trading in this season, I do believe SSF has more of a place now than it used to be, as people will want that tag. Therefore, it is a question that we'll try to get to today. $5 from Jordan saying getting Uber mats is so monotonous, and I'm mispronouncing that, and people buying them is especially an issue. Just the Uber space in general. Can we ask them for thoughts on this? So this was pseudo covered in Rax's previous interview, where he talked about the trading in the game, which does include boss material mats, as well as RMT and third-party sites. So this was very lightly touched upon in the previous one. Now, in terms of it being a labor to get Uber mats, we're not going to ask them if they're going to buff the rates or anything like that. They seem to be pretty obvious about their intentions related to gathering the Uber mats. They now have up to 3 resplendent sparks, for instance, and they keep increasing the Uber drop rates. It seems like they already know that feedback. So instead of hitting them with feedback they already know, in which the answer will be that they'll tell us, okay, well, we've done this and we've done this and this already to increase Uber drop rates, and the Hell Tides now drop them, and we have them as global drop rates, etc. That's already pseudo answered with their actions. So more than likely, we're not going to get into that one today. But I do agree with you, for the record, by the way, that I don't like farming the materials either. So I would agree with you there, Jordan. On to the next one. Detail about the starter set. I can ask about that in the rapid fire portion. That was something that was not entirely covered in the previous interviews. It was one of the questions that Rax wanted to get to, which is the faux sets as Diablo 4 is trending towards Diablo 3. That is our 7th question, if we have time to get there, about Diablo 4 trending towards Diablo 3, and some follow-ups that Rax wanted to get to, he was not able to. So if we have enough time for that, then we will be getting to that one as well. But that's our 7th question in line, and is one of the bullet points on this bullet points there on the 7th one. Let's see. When you ask pets, can you mention mercenaries specifically? We have a very fast rapid fire question about pets and followers, if we can get there, which is like, okay, pets and followers coming to the game, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Pretty much like that level of question, pretty fast, because when we get to the rapid fire portion, there's almost 20 of these questions. Can you ask if they'll fix trophy achievements that are bugs, specifically the exploiting one? I can't platinum because of the bug. That is interesting. I haven't heard that one before. I will add that into the rapid fire portion now. That sounds like it's specifically a PS5 prom. Maybe anyone else can confirm they have that same issue. I'll add that to the bottom of the rapid fire. Rumors were partially answered in Riker's interview, but could we rapid fire a yes/no question for expansion? I can't ask about. I would love to. I can't ask about anything about expansions because they can't talk about expansion because they're bottlenecked on being able to talk about it. Like they're not allowed to discuss expansion stuff today. Basically, they don't have the freedom to discuss expansions, so I can't talk about the expansion basically today. I would love to ask them more about it, but we can't yet. I'm sure if the interviews are going well, that what they will end up doing is doing more of these as time goes on and as we actually get closer, I would assume, towards the expansion itself, in which you could ask about the expansion then. When is the interview? It's the top of the hour. So we're getting there. Actually, a few minutes before the top of the hour, we're going to go into a holding screen so that we can get people in and get the audio balance, etc. Did they fix snapshotting? I'm probably not going to spend too much of the limited time we have talking about bugs that could be fixed at the moment. I'm probably going to attempt to try to get new information as opposed to reporting bugs during this, as that is something that gets sent as feedback very often. I see on the Twitch side of things, thanks for the Prime subs and the Tier 1 subs. I appreciate that, boys. And for the people doing membership, etc. on YouTube, thank you. Larger viewing angles. Well, we just received the camera zoom out. Seasonal theme should be account wide. Okay, so I'm seeing feedback related questions. Keep in mind, we're trying to get new information, not send feedback. This interview, we can send feedback at any time. All of us creators are in a partner program, so when people send feedback like, hey, can you guys fix this bug, etc., a lot of times we send that instead over to the partner program where they can receive the bug, the bug fixes and feedback, etc. It would be a misuse of time to just report bugs during this interview. If you can squeeze a quick PvP question during rapid fire, it'd be significant for us. So I talked about this earlier. I'm sure you just showed up. We are going to have a rapid fire section, and within the rapid fire section, we do specifically ask about PvP for that PvP community. I'm not a PvP Andy. There's plenty of people that aren't PvP Andys, but there are people that are. So it's within one of the first, I think, 3 to 4 within the rapid fire question. We just ask very simply, are there plans to further develop PvP? Basically. I know there's people out there that specifically play the game for PvP. I know there's people that don't give a rat's ass about PvP. I understand that. So I will do my best to make sure that gets fitted in, if at a minimum, as the very last question, but on its way out the door. I'll make sure we get that one fitted in, okay? Thanks for the 5, by the way. Let me pull up some more questions here. I've been reading from YouTube chat. Let me read from Twitch chat here. I wrote Rainbow Goblin Poros again. We do have that in the rapid fire portion. We try asking them if they're going to implement a few stuff to experience in the game, which interact with streamers while streaming the game like Baldur's Gate 3 did. That's cool, but that's more something that benefits myself personally as opposed to information that people who are all the way from casual to like Omega Blasters would care to hear. So I'm not going to ask things that are only relevant really to myself being a streamer today. This is going to be questions related that the general audience cares about, so probably won't be asking about streamer benefits. Is Diablo 4 still a thing or just a meme? Should I buy it now? All right. I don't know. Up to you, bro. Go look at reviews. Can you ask if they plan to add raids to the game? Raids are within the rapid fire portion. Yes. Yo, Ruined Puzzle with the 5 tier 1 gifted. Thank you, sir. Very generous. Have Blizzard considered sharing a map editor on Campaign Editor, more like an in-house mod for D4 or an instance creation that can be shared to other players? So one of the points that I thought would have been interesting in Season 3 for the Vault is instead of it being a vault that we all go do and try to beat, then what it actually is a vault that you create that other players try to beat your trap vault. Sort of like a Mighty Loot for Epic, or a Mighty Quest for Epic Loot, if you guys ever remember that game, where you build a base that other players raid. I thought that could have been a cool PvP way of doing it, as well as a cool way to have something create yourself. I don't think that question in particular is actually going to make it into this today. But I do like where you're going with that one, because I also like things like that allow you to be creative in games. But I don't think a dungeon editor is going to be very high up on the list of priorities for them, if I had to imagine. That was talked about with Racks for Maps. I must have missed that one as I watched the interviews. Can you ask if specializations for every class are going to be improved upon? He is the class lead designer today. We do have some class-related questions towards the end of it. Asking them if the classes are basically going to become better isn't necessarily a great way to phrase that question. So we might not ask it in the words that you're asking here today, but we are asking what their next focus typically is on in relation to like class fantasy, for instance, which might be a way of getting close to your specialization. Ask about making sets as set gems, not items. So we don't ask about set items in particular, but we do actually talk about progression related to things outside of only the skill tree, one of which basically being like gems, etc. Or in this game would be more referred to as glyphs. Adam specifically said in Rex's interview that questions that was the next priority are better than will you do this? Yes. So part of our focus and our prep for the interview has been as much about wording it in a way that somebody is allowed to speak on, as much as preparing for what questions are important. Like we're trying to, the wording of these questions have to be making it where he can talk about it. I can't just ask him, hey, in the expansion, is the paladin coming? Like, you just can't say things like that. We will get non-answers. So we are doing our best to have our list of questions be things that make it easy for him to have a good conversation on the interview, as opposed to locking him down and putting him in defensively. Trying to make it like a good interview here. Or at least attempting to. Thoughts on giving all classes equipment slot parity? I don't think that's going to work as a barbarian, right? You mind asking about trade board / market would enable community engagement? Appreciate the 10. That is something that came up in the previous interview with Rax. I do believe they said they're not going to do an auction house, if I'm remembering correctly. And we're not going to double dip into the same questions that were already previously asked. So while I like that question, I also do believe that trading, I even made a video talking about how like trading is going to be significantly different going into Season 4. That is something that has sort of already been covered, and I would be reiterating upon a question that's already been covered. Can you ask for the final temper manuals? Yes, actually, that is one of our questions, is related to clarity of tempering manual changes, etc. The first question is to be, why did such an awesome person like you join D4? That's a good one. I'm sure he would love that question. Yeah, thanks for the subs. I see that. Lo-Fi High with the 5 tier 1s. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it on the Twitch side of things with the hype train going on. Are they going to add new Uber uniques or update existing ones? So we're not asking, are you going to have new Uber uniques? Because they've already been adding new Uber uniques. And so we can determine by previous information that they're going to continue to add Uber uniques. It would be sort of a throwaway question, because we know that they'll be adding more. They have been. Can you ask him if I could hold the dollar? There's some really interesting questions in here. I feel like I'm getting trolled with some of these questions. If I had the dollar for every Cal level question I'm getting. Can you ask if all PvE will be PvP? I don't even know what that means. I don't know if anyone in here knows what that means, so be honest. Pineapple on pizza, yes, no. No for me. Can you ask if we'll be able to craft an Uber unique? So that is already in the game, as a matter of fact. You can get 3 resplendent sparks, and you have to get a drop of the 4th one to get the 4th spark, which will allow you to craft a total Uber unique of whatever you want. That being said, one of the rapid fire questions was, are they ever going to add a 4th spark, or is the design philosophy about making it where you have to get a drop before you can pick the drop, basically, or if they would ever allow deterministic crafting of Uber uniques. Shop prices and plans for singular armor cosmetics for sale. So both between the expansions as well as the shop are 2 things we're not going to address today. Rex said he was going to coordinate with you with questions he wasn't able to get to. Are you going to be asking any of those? Yes, we have plenty of questions from Rex's pamphlet that he was not able to get through today. Shout out to Rex for being generous enough to pass along the torch and some questions. That did help significantly today with prep. Ask them if they're up for an AMA on Reddit. I don't think that's an important question. I think that's an interesting one. I like that question, but I don't think that's an important use of time. If I had 2 hours here with Ghazi where we could go back and forth and do a podcast, it's different. This isn't our normal interview. We've done lots of interviews with PoE and Last Epoch devs. We've done plenty of these. But in all of those, we had 2 to 3 hours. This is 45 minutes. So this isn't going to be so much a conversation or a use of everything I want to know as much as like, what can we cram in to this 45 minutes? If you've seen the previous interviews, you know they are short. So we're doing what we can to the priority for it. Now put priority for questions. Seems you have too many. We only have 6 that are high priority. The rest are rapid fire. Yeah, so we have actually put them in the priority list, assuming that we don't get through all of them. We did that this morning. Thank you for the sub, sir. Need you to ask a simple question about clans, please. It doesn't need a complete rework. Always the status. How long is someone's offline? We can manage the clan. Yeah, I did see that question actually yesterday, as a matter of fact. During Rex's interview, people were asking about that in the chat. So I will actually put that in the rapid fire portion for you, Hog. And I'll put it in the top 5 of the rapid fire for you. Sure. Did you pass those 6 questions to Adam already? Yeah, we pretty much said, hey, here's your prep. Like, these are the questions we're going to ask. And we haven't changed or removed any of them other than the charms question, because charms are just something that is not able really to be spoken upon. So things that are a useless waste of time that he can't talk about have been removed, and we only have 1 of those, which is basically charms. Other than that, everything's remained the same. DM, can you begin streaming on YouTube? Streaming on YouTube right now, my friend. Thank you very much. $5 from Throck, no question. Thank you, Throck. Can you please ask if they address concerns over store pricing? So I just brought this up. Store pricing and expansions are things that won't be brought up today due to the fact that it's things that people cannot speak on. So we're only asking things that we can actually get answers on. We're not asking any questions that the devs will basically say, well, we can't talk about that right now. We're trying to avoid situations where we basically box him into a corner with 5 questions in a row where he's like, I can't talk about that. I don't want to get fired. I can't talk about that. Like, we're trying not to waste time with questions that we know can't be answered already. So these questions are going to be things that we can either get design intent behind, or we can get intent to develop, or things that he could potentially actually talk about. We're trying to not put him in a corner. Plus, if you look in the previous interview, we're interviewing Adam Jackson today, and one of the things I respected was in the previous interview he stated that he does not talk about or promise things that he knows he can't follow through on. And so I'm only going to ask him stuff that we can actually get an answer on, basically. And if there's some of the things he can't talk about, then so be it. And he's going to say that he can't talk about it. We are trying a few of these that we're hoping he can talk about. But they are things that haven't been asked about before and that, should promote conversation. We're doing our best here. We watched all of the previous interviews, and to be honest, I respect the not wanting to do false promises. Plus, it's one guy up there. He's got a whole team behind him. If he goes up and promises like, yes, charms are coming next week, then he's setting the entire team up for a promise that he might potentially not be able to fulfill on, and then it opens up to them to, okay, well, you said it was coming, but now it's not coming. Blizzard once again is failing on their promises. Like that, it's too hard for somebody who's being interviewed to be able to commit that heavily as a singular person who's not like the actual, CEO here. So he's a class designer. So we're trying to ask questions that are relative to his job and things he can talk about. Pretty much that simple. Did the interview happen already? No, it will be happening shortly. It starts in 30 minutes. In about 15, we'll go to audio testing. I'm posting on Twitter real quick for the people that follow there so that they know it's about to start. Any questions regarding Paragon boards? You will be happy to hear that the first question is about Paragon. Thank you for the 279, Paulo. No question. It says message retracted. Can you ask if there are plans to add glyph leveling outside of nightmares? I do like that question. I'll add that to the rapid fire, actually. I'll put that one in there. See if we can get to that one. Love the Hawaii tan. I didn't tan in Hawaii as much as I burned, if we're being honest. Please ask about boss rotations, group to get 4x to the solo player. Weren't this already addressed in the previous one? I think people talked about the balance around 4x and 1x Uber Durio farming. I think this was a question that's already been spoke upon, if I remember. So that one is not in our questions today. Like I say, we are trying to stick to questions that have not been addressed. Even if they're pseudo answers. You're completely healed? It is actually now, yeah. I was glad to hear, glad to hear that I did not have a loss of hearing. I went to the ear doc. Can you ask the dev how to bring back the D2 experience, building your character in a unique way, not again looking like Rex-worthy character in order to complete the pit? So we have a question related to progression of characters outside of the skill tree, because the skill tree portion has been answered. So we're pseudo getting to that question. Ask them about Golem mastery on equipment. You will be happy to hear that is in today's questions. I believe it's actually the second or third one. That's specifically about the Golem mastery is actually in there. What's their approach to balance between casuals and no-lifers like us? I like that question. That one is something, because that I actually had previously in the list, which was about target demographic and who the game's designed for is something I would love to hear more on. I ended up cutting that one. And the reason I cut it is because it wasn't something I think everyone cares about, which is that is more of a business philosophy, which is, hey, we're trying to acquire this audience or this audience, and I don't think people care about that as much as what the game has in store. So we cut that one in lieu of focusing more on like what do you guys plan to do or developing thoughts around things for the game as opposed to thoughts around business practices. So we do have that one as a backup question because I personally find the philosophy stuff more interesting than I find like the game balance stuff, just personally. But we're not going with what I personally find more interesting today. When is it starting? Shortly. In about 15 minutes, we're going to go to audio test. It starts at the top of the hour here. That's the most important question. I think it's an important question as well, but for the reasons stated is why that one is moved to a lower portion of the list, just to answer you. Let me look at some. I've been reading a lot of YouTube chat. Let me move over to the Twitch chat here for a moment. Thanks for the sub, buddy. Ask if they ever tend to revamp Paragon boards. Pretty much the first question. Can you ask if I can get an interview too? I got 64 followers. Only like half of them are bots. No problem, buddy. I got you. Can we have a DPS meter on target dummies? That's a pretty cool one. I think I remember that one being asked before, but I'm going to add it into the rapid fire. What about clan banks, mailboxes, etc.? I believe expansion upon the clan system was something that was covered previously. I don't think in particular like clan banks or something that's been addressed. That's not in the questions today. But we do have the offline question related to clans in here. So we have one clan related question for the rapid fire portion. What about the new horse? Actually, one of the questions for rapid fire is, what do you think about doing mounts that like aren't horses? You know, like a maggot from Maggot Lair. Please ask about strongholds and new mechanic about it. Strongholds are in the questions today. Can you ask about making side quest rewards on par with other activities? That's an interesting one. We didn't get to that one, though. I don't think that's going to make the list today, but I like that question. Ask them in the rapid fire portion, is there going to be a more detailed combat log? We might be able to get to that one. I don't know. Our rapid fire portion is filling up pretty quickly here. Does your Tinder profile say skinny hippie Viking? I'm going to try hard not to say your mom joke. You know, ask your mom. I tried. I couldn't do it. Can you talk about how group play is discouraged in the pit? I see this question coming up all the time. I think like the group play versus solo player thing is very, very, very much like talked about already. I think they even addressed this in the previous interview, like the one literally from yesterday, if I remember right. Can you have some efficiency regarding group versus solo? Yeah, see, like this question's getting every 15 seconds. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one was already addressed and they had to kind of pseudo answer it. Are you going to be as interrupting as Rax was invited to yesterday but didn't? I mean, I'm not going to, if he's talking about something, I'm not going to interrupt him to be like, hey, can you explain to me, like, just as an example, this isn't one of them, can you explain to me why Druid companions are the way they are or something? And he starts talking about it, and I'd be like, hey, that was great, but that's your time. Can you explain to me DPS meters on dummies? Like, I'm not going to do that. He's on an interview, and Adam, in my opinion, from what I saw, doesn't ramble a whole lot. He pretty much talks about it. And we have 6 major questions. We've only honed it down to a smaller amount of major questions. What about question regarding a season with more in-depth crafting mechanics? That's very open-ended, like, hey, are you guys going to do a season where you do even more crafting? The answer will be, what do you think the answer will be? You think he's going to say, yes, season 6, actually, we have this new mechanic. Let me spoil it for you. Like, what he's going to say, if I ask that type of question, is he's just going to be like, maybe, or we'll see. Like, that's all we would get out of that. So I actually agree with someone in chat that says, ask the right type of questions, you get the right type of answers. We're trying to put the majority of the work on things we can control, which is the way that we phrase and ask our questions and the questions we choose to ask. So we're not going to ask a whole bunch of stuff that we can't do anything with. We're trying very hard to ask good questions because we have a very limited amount of them. We think we're going to get maybe 6 questions from what we can tell. The interview starts shortly. We're going to be bringing the co-hosting Ghazi TV here shortly. Yes, T-minus is 25 minutes. Can Can you ask for more body types for each class? The answer to that, I guarantee you the answer to that will be that if I ask about that, then he's going to say that animations would have to be retooled for every single different body type, and that's a ton of work, so it'll be low on the priority list. Because, you know, maybe I want to play a skinny druid, I get that, but then they're going to have to retool animations for all of them, and I think they probably have other priorities at the moment. Please, I'm begging you, give ideas to Blizzard. I don't think Blizzard needs to hear in the 45 minutes, like, my ideas for their game. I think what we want to hear is their ideas for their own game, because that's what you guys care about. I don't think the people that are watching want to hear me develop their game for them in a 45-minute interview. So more than likely, I'm not going to be like, here's what I think you should do, because I can just do that in a video. I can do that in the feedback if I wanted to in the Diablo partner program, Discord. I could just send information. So we're going to be focusing more on Blizzard's answer in Blizzard's interview. Any future plans for world bosses? That is actually one of our questions on the list that made the top priority. Yes, it is something that strongholds and world bosses are something we very much would like to know about the philosophy behind, and that is on our list today. Thoughts on additional cosmetics like weapon glows, etc. We have a couple minor cosmetic questions as well. Okay, so let's pull Ghazi in here and let's start prepping for the interview here. I'm going to call my co-host. We're going to get him in here. We're going to start setting up the overlay and what have you. Here we go. Ring, ring, banana phone. All right.
Are we gonna do the mic sound check in Zoom instead?
Yeah, we probably need to join the Zoom, right?
Yes. Let's
Okay.
see. There's a link in there.
Okay, let's go ahead and hop in the Zoom. Start getting set up here. I'm gonna put the questions off to the side so I can see them easily. The interview is about to start, boys, so we are now getting ready. In AOZ, we had in-game content that's scaled indefinitely, but not really with Pit having a similar line of thought. Could we have a mechanic, i.e. a glyph that could scale like that too? That's an interesting one. I'll see if I can add that to the rapid fire portion if we end up having time, because we do have not infinitely scaling, but the Pit is literally harder than AOZ. Now as Pit, I believe it's Pit 150 scales to what AOZ 25 was before. So we actually have harder content now than we did before. Okay, so the live stream interview is about to start here. I'm going to join the Zoom. He'll be able to join for audio testing in about 5 minutes, it sounds like. So we're getting really close to the interview starting here, boys. Okay, I'm going to join the Zoom now, Ghazi. Okay, let's see how this works. Let's drop out Discord. Okay, can you hear me, Ghazi?
I can indeed.
Okay.
How do I adjust your volume?
Yeah, we need to adjust volumes. We at the last minute here, we're kind of moving from Discord to Zoom, so we're trying to get the audio and stuff set up here. Can you just start talking a little bit, please?
Yes. How do I adjust the volume that I'm hearing from you?
That's what I am currently figuring out here as well. I don't really use Zoom.
Am I too loud or too low?
Maybe. How's Ghazi sound to you guys here?
Mic check. 1, 2, 3. Mic check.
Too low. You are too low. So I need to adjust you higher. Okay, maybe participants. Too low. Okay, yeah, definitely low. Let me see what I can do about that here.
I don't find any menus of.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at too. I know I don't use Zoom here. I thought we were gonna use Discord, so let me adjust here. Okay, so there's settings. Sounds good. Compared to DM, he's way too low. Okay, yeah, let me see what I can do here. Okay, can you try talking one more time here?
Oh, mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Did
Okay.
you just alter the app sound, or did you find a way
I
to...
OBS'd it.
Okay.
Better. Sounds good. Good. Okay, so that will do it for... Could be louder, a bit better. Okay, we'll just get everyone balanced. We'll have to take a couple minutes to balance everyone's audio before we get rolling here. Need more loud?
Can't find a way to adjust your volume.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it too here. There's no individual volume slider for...
There is not.
That's...
Adam just responded. I'd recommend via OBS or Windows level. I'll just fix it on my headset. I'll be fine.
Okay. Working
I
on
mean,
it.
I guess we have to balance so that our sounds are equal when we're more people, though.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to balance each individual one here. Yeah, I have Zoom meeting all the way maxed out on the Windows and on OBS slider, so I can add more gain to it. I can boost the audio levels too in OBS if necessary. But we'll have to
up my volume on my mic a little bit.
Yeah, we'll have to change all of our individual mic levels to level it out instead of doing it in app then.
Yep.
So that'll be the way we'll have to do. I can lower mine a little bit too. People are saying I'm a little bit louder. As long as you can hear him, then we'll be all right. And once he gets in here, we'll see what his audio level is like, and we should be able to balance it that way.
I have like 10, 15% before I cap out on the interface. Like an increase.
I think, okay, so in both chats, both Twitch and YouTube, I'm trusting your guys' feedback. Please give me a W if he sounds fine, and we don't need to adjust anything for Ghazi. Please do an L if it's way too low, way too high, like there's a problem. If it sounds fine, don't troll us because the interview is about to start. We need accurate feedback here.
Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, mic check.
Okay, I'm seeing both chats are responding resounding W. Thank you very much. Couple L's for people. Mostly W's. Should be louder. That shit's low. Now I'm seeing a lot of L's. Keep talking. Keep talking. Keep talking.
All right. Do you want me to adjust the volume or just leave it as is?
I literally cannot adjust you any higher. It is physically impossible within Zoom. So you'll need to adjust your microphone.
I have maxed it. I hope it's not too loud now.
Okay.
This is maxed out. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3, mic check, mic check.
That sounds better on my end. And I guess we'll just have to do the classic Joe Rogan fist from your face with the microphone, speak into the mic directly.
Oh yeah, that's the position I'm in.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now I'm seeing everyone saying that's significantly better. That's as good as it's going to get. Okay, so that sounds fine. So now we'll just, once Adam arrives here, then we'll get that going. We need to get also I'll have to get the layout set up here for the podcast. Once he joins, then I can cut it out. Okay, Zoom conference. I'm getting this set up now. Okay, that's the Zoom. That's the questions. We might end up having to bell on the podcast, nice little overlay, and do it differently because it looks like Zoom is one of those ones that does not allow capturing.
Really?
Yeah, you can't window capture, at least not that I can see.
What server are we connected to?
What server are we connected to?
For Zoom. I'm guessing we're on one of the East Coast servers, right?
I do not know. By the way, the interview starts, and for people wondering, it starts in 15 minutes. We will be starting in 15 minutes, but we're just doing the setup process right now. That's why we're saying here, mess around with settings, etc., trying to get all of the setup properly. Okay, let me see if I can use, I can probably use display capture duplicates then. That's
The good old-fashioned way to do it. And then crop
the
out each
ghetto way,
individual.
my friend. Yeah, the absolute ghetto dog way.
Well, done that way too many times.
You gotta love it. Yep, it's one of those. Okay, we're gonna go with multi-window capture here, or multi display capture to get it up.
I believe mercenaries is no, our pets was about non-combat pets, right? In the rapid fire.
Yeah, so like both cosmetic pets basically, as well as the follower ones. We can do 1 and 2.
Yeah. All right. So whilst you do that, SR Axie, the problem with asking that question is like Dean was talking about earlier before I came in, is that they can't tell us what they're going to potentially or going to introduce to the game. So they might just the answer will either be they can't talk about it or it sounds like a good idea, but we can't talk about it. Need anything from me for the setup? Or you're good with everything?
Well, at the moment, I'm stuck waiting on when he joins, because once he joins, then I can get it visually set in the positions.
Roger.
But we're in the 2-person layout right now, so until we have the 3-person layout, I can't adjust any of the visuals. Little low. We're pretty much. I think we're gonna keep Ghazi at the level he's at. This is about as loud as we're able to get him currently.
I mean, I can ramp it up on the compressor, but you know that has consequences.
Yeah,
you know?
I think you sound about as loud as I've ever heard you right now for me.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna. So what we're gonna do in order to make the ads not hit during the interview here, I'm going to disable ads on YouTube. Okay, I'm gonna
spam them up on Twitch.
Yep. I'm just gonna disable ads on it here. Put them to the lowest I can, which is conservative. Let me see if I can do it. Can I go all the way off with them?
There's this new thing that Twitch viewers can do. It's pretty cool. Doesn't cost them anything either. It's called Twitch Prime. I know you guys have some. Just
there it is.
Pop them.
Okay, so there should be. I believe I was able to fully disable. I hope that doesn't affect the thing, since I'm changing settings right now. But I took monetization off entirely on the YouTube ads for YouTube, so you guys should just have like no ads at all. And let me, in order to stop ads from occurring during the interview, we're going to have to, let's see, there's one running already now, so I can't hit the button. We have to run like the ad now to make it where it gets delayed for a while during the interview. So I have my snoozes, which can snooze another 15 minutes, plus the 15-minute gap. I'm going to try to get it where it'll go the full hour with no ads. So we'll get that set up too. And then once he joins, we'll get his visual set up, and then that should be everything. We're pretty much good to go with the interview. Did I miss anything? Feels like it hasn't started. That's because it hasn't. It starts in like 10 minutes approximately, give or take a few minutes while we're getting everything set up. Okay. For the people on Twitch, if I'm unable to get the ads to stop by running them early, because right now I have 26 minutes of no ads, and I can add another 15, so I got 41 minutes of no ads. The back, like 10 minutes or something, might hit you with a 1-minute ad. I'm trying to get those delayed as much as possible. YouTube will have 0 ads right now. I have it completely disabled. Are you nervous? Not really. I mean, it's like asking like 6 questions. I hope you guys like the questions we have. At this point, we're just going to be reading off the questions we have on the list. We did our best to make sure that they are like good questions, and stuff that haven't been asked already. We'll do our best. But in terms of nervous, I was more nervous for the Path of Exile ones, to be quite honest with you, because I had never talked to those dudes. Probably the PoE ones were nervous. Maybe the Last Epoch one, because I didn't know Last Epoch very well when we did the interview.
Oh, but I mean, me coming off as a royal ass probably helped.
I don't think ass is bad. You talk about that more than other people talk about that. I think you're overhyping it. It's really not that big of a deal.
No, I was a little bit embarrassed. I was like, shit. Didn't even realize it. But no, I talked to them quite a lot, but they liked it. We're gonna have more when the witch reveal comes around. It's gonna be fun.
All right, so let me just see here. Okay, so everything's set up as much as I can get it set up currently. There's our boy. Okay, guys, I'm gonna put a real quick like BRB screen here while we are getting things set up because we're gonna do some audio tests and stuff on our end here and get the layout all set up. The boys here now, so give us a few moments and we will be right back with the interview. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with the boy Adam Jackson. Thank you for coming on, Adam. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Fantastic. Excited.
The interview questions are going to start because I know we're a little early. We're about 4 minutes early, so we're just going to have a couple minute intro while the people row in here. It will be starting at exactly 1 p.m. PST. But outside of that, how has the day been for you? Very easy icebreaker, so we would waste the 3 minutes before we get going.
Yeah, totally. It's been wild. We've got so much stuff going on between working on season 4, more seasons and things coming up in the future. Lots of planning, lots of talks. The season's going to be coming out soon. And I expect a whole lot of feedback and reaction to that. So it's a busy time over here, but pretty exciting as well.
Nice, man. It sounds like you guys are going to have a pretty interesting launch because season 4 is coming out here very shortly, and I think itemization is going to be the big talk. We do have some questions related to both itemization, what's going to be next, etc., for you to go through here on the list. Before we get started, we have to do a quick thing and make sure everyone here can hear the audio just fine. Can you hear Ghazi? So Ghazi, can you say a sentence?
I can say a sentence, absolutely. Super excited for the release. Minions, that's all I'm saying.
And Adam, if literally anything at all you want to say.
Yeah, test. I also am a minion enjoyer, it turns out.
So I've
Excited
heard.
to talk about them.
Oh no! Don't get Ghazi started on minions when we get going, man. That's gonna.
We've spent like the last few days. So I've told DM you got to make sure that I don't go off on a rant here because we're gonna spend the next 45 minutes on that topic. So we've done our best to make sure we don't get stuck there. Okay.
I'm trying to keep him on a leash from the whole thing being a necromancer interview, but we'll do what we have to do. So
I get it. Everyone has their thing. Some people it's druid wolves, some people it's necro minions, some people it's breaking the game with barb permanently. Everybody's got their thing.
All right. So with that being said, I think we've stalled enough to let the people roll in. If you're not here by now, we're just going to get going. We kind of we're wasting a minute or two because we're a couple minutes early. But with that being said, thank you everyone for joining across the different live stream platforms for this interview with Blizzard's own Adam Jackson. Before we get going, you want to just say who you are, what your job is over there for the people that for some reason don't happen to know.
Yeah, totally. So, hi everybody. My name is Adam Jackson. I'm the lead class designer, specifically on the live classes team. So, our group handles a lot of the pretty much all of the balance updates that you see going into the game for classes. We also are heavily involved in systems and the stuff that you see really in seasonal and expansion releases that have to do with the things that you farm and why, and the classes themselves, and the new legendaries, uniques going in, that kind of stuff.
And Ghazi, introduce yourself for the people that don't know.
Minion Andy, I guess is the easiest way to describe it. I do mostly written guides, content for ARPG games, mostly for Path of Exile, Diablo 4, last ebook recently. Just a hard minion enjoyer. I can't get enough of it.
Minion Andy Ghazi. And then, of course, I'm DM. And with that being said, we're going to get going. So thank you, first of all, for joining us for the interview. It is now 1 p.m. PST. We're going to start with our first question. So right out of the get-go, we have some questions. Hopefully we can get to all of them. If we don't, it's all good. We're going to start with the first one here, which is with the recent focus of gameplay being post 100, the 1 to 50 process a little faster than it used to be on launch, right? What are the team's thoughts on progressing the Paragon system? An example being like new Paragon boards, etc.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely room, I believe, and this is like my personal opinion talking here, but I think that there's definitely room to make Paragon more interesting. Adding new boards and things is always on the table. That is something that we can do, and probably is something that we will do. But the way that we kind of think of Paragon is that it's kind of your one-stop shop where we try to make stats cool, right? Like why you care about strength, why you care about whatever stats you're chasing. Like it's one of those places where we try to make it a little bit more interesting and robust. I think we did a decent job at the launch game with Paragon, but I think that there's more that we could add to the depth of the system to make it just more appealing. We did a little bit of that in season 2. If you remember, we started adding scaling mechanics where we turned some of your stats that are always additive into multiplicative scaling stats, like usually in legendary Paragon nodes and other places. But that's kind of a little bit of experimentation in that regard. I would expect that we do more in the future. Of course, nothing to announce, but that's kind of how we're thinking about it right now, is that it's cool. We think there's more opportunity to do cool things there. Something simple like adding new boards, yeah, I don't think there's really a high risk there, and it's something that I could totally see us doing.
I'm curious to the idea of the further development of the Paragon system, because I know in the interview you had with Rax, the question regarding the skill tree was that the idea was to not further develop that, at least not too much, for the sake of new and newer players. And then after level 50, we see a progression of that part being the game focus for the company. But how do you see that? Well, how does the team think about the progression of that development without making it too advanced for those players?
Yeah, good question. Paragon board sits in a different place than the skill tree, right? Skill tree is like the very first thing you're introduced to as a player. So keeping that experience really easy to understand and robust for someone that's never played an ARPG before is a much harder task compared to Paragon, where Paragon, you've already gotten pretty far into the game or beat the campaign is our expectation. So we're allowed to add more complexity at that point in the game. That being said, there are some like UX issues that I think we know about with Paragon. Like, it can be a pain to reset and fill in all the many little blips that you have to. Like, I think those are actually more concerning issues that I would rather see us tackle than only adding new content. I think we can do both, of course. But these are kinds of the things of the problems that we're looking to solve, I guess you could say, with Paragon. Simplicity is always a factor because we do want people to understand our game, and ARPGs are notoriously crunchy. But if there is a place that we can be a little crunchier, I would say it is in Paragon, if anywhere in our game, if that makes sense.
That's fair. We can move on to the next question we have is that as many people are planning their builds in Season 4, and we would like to ask for some clarity pre-launch regarding tempering affixes, mostly due to the fact that the patch notes stated that they'd be balanced but lack specific details. And I guess the same question applies to core modifiers such as ranks of Golem Mastery being available in multiple item slots.
Yeah, lots of people like to ask about Golem Mastery. So I guess what I would say is when it comes to patch notes and what we show to players between PTR and live is that we kind of have rules and guidelines for how we present patch notes and what we put in them for between releases. And PTR is kind of a special case because PTR, we're introducing new content to you for the first time, but then the live patch is actually when we introduce that content for real. And I'm using air quotes, right? Because not everybody is expected to play the PTR. PTR is also notoriously not balanced because it's way earlier in development than when we would normally release something. And so, managing expectations and how we present patch notes is something that we're still figuring out. And what that really means is, when we introduce whole new systems to the game, we don't specify every single little detail of them. As an example, in the PTR, when we introduce the recipes, we don't list every single tempering recipe and what the numbers are right now in the PTR notes, because like our notes are already huge. It would blow them out and make them way bigger, right? And then if we, don't put them in PTR, but then we put them in live, then we blow out those notes. And then it's like, well, why didn't you put them in PTR? And then if we only show the difference, like only show the things that we changed, then people are wondering, well, why did you only show like half the tempering recipes? Because those are the ones that you changed, but you're not showing the rest. And then it can get confusing of like, well, where are the rest of the recipes, right? Like, why don't you just show it all? And so like, it's an easy kind of thing to get caught up in what we show. So in the future, I think we can show more. It just means that we would have to like commit to showing that in the PTR, which then means there's more pressure on the PTR release to have those things in a better state and actually quantify out the bigger list of changes, right? So it depends. But as far as like specifics, if you want to know some of the things like that are changing with tempering, there's a whole lot of number changes. Most of them are minor and aren't really that big of a deal. We did shift around where a few of the recipes, or not, like what stats are in what recipes and that kind of stuff to make more sense based on feedback. And then we did adjust some things that were just the typical, this is early in development and wasn't intended at all, but it's PTR, so this is when you get to see it. The ranks of Golem Masteries in that category, I think people were getting crazy, like 25 plus or something ranks. No, it's supposed to be just like every single other passive that you get. It's only in, very few slots, and it's very special when you get it. So, if you were planning on making a Golem build where they slam for 2 billion damage, you're not going to do it via mastery ranks. But I'm sure there's other ways to still make things crazy.
Yeah, guys, he got his minion. He got his minion question in and got an answer there, nice and early. Got it out of the way. Since we're talking about the PTR, I just want to slip an additional follow-up to that. Did you guys get out of the PTR what you were hoping to get? I know the players were excited to actually get their hands on the PTR and test it out, etc. But I'm curious if you guys got what you were hoping to get out of launching a PTR.
Oh, absolutely. In spades. When we release very large swaths of the game, like I would say the launch was the closest to this. Season 2 was moderately close to this, but I think this is bigger than that because we updated all of itemization, right? We gave people stats and powers that they never had access to, not limited to uniques where we can very control, like, hey, you get this very specific, special, powerful thing. But in items like, tempering affixes and things where we let you get bonus projectiles across the board or area size, those are very high risk things from our point of view. And by risk, I mean like, not only are they scary because of balance, but they're scary because of like PC performance and breaking servers and stuff. Because a lot of our game wasn't made in mind with every projectile could not just have one more, but be doubled in the amount. Sure. Or, the size of these skills were handcrafted to be, this is the size. And, we may have a back alley deal like, yep, we're never going to do that again. Have a handshake. We're never going to increase it, whatever, because this is what the size is going to be. And then we're like, oh, wait, we want to double it and do more than, actually, we did more than double it in PTR. We didn't even have a cap. And so we have to figure out like how we're going to manage these things for the long term and be healthy in the game. PTR was incredibly helpful for that. We got a ton of balance feedback, which is nice. But I would say the bigger important one was like, how does the game feel? Like the playing through the whole experience of tempering, masterworking, and that progression. We can have an idea of it, but when you have 50, 100, 200, even 1,000 people playing it, it's not nearly as much information as you would think compared to like 10 million people playing it, right? Or whatever. Sure. Like when you throw numbers at something, you really see the cracks very quickly and very easily, and they're more clear. Whereas when we're only testing things internally, we'll be like, oh, this could be a problem, or oh, this doesn't feel great, but it might be fine, right? Like we can have a discussion and we're using our brains and figuring it out. But we don't have the surety that we do when we throw a ton of people at it, especially people who are experts on ARPGs like you guys and our other creators and even just hardcore community members that really like to crunch these numbers and figure things out. They'll find things in 5 minutes that might take us 5 days, right? So it's just efficient. Okay. So yeah. Short answer, yes, incredibly useful.
I appreciate the insight on that one. So moving on to the next question here. So one of the major things that are happening in Season 4 is obviously itemization. That rework is now being complete with Loot Reborn. What would you guys like to focus on next as your next sort of major focus?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't get super specific details, but I can give you ideas of how we're thinking about things right now.
Sure.
Immediate future, I think actually the focus of the team is on reacting to Season 4 and this big upheaval that we made to the game. I am very sure that there will be cracks in tempering and masterworking and the player journey as far as, the pit and how all of this feels when put together of like how good the game actually is. And those cracks are going to need to be iterated on and filled a little bit of like, hey, we need more tempering recipes here, or hey, the progression of the pit doesn't feel that great there, or whatever, right? Our immediate thing is because we upheavaled so much in our game, your whole end game way that you interact with Diablo 4 and your item progression is now a journey rather than just you hope the perfect item drops and you're done. Those are huge foundational things in ARPG. So making those and refining those to be good is the immediate largest concern by a pretty good amount. Like I think when you look at like what we're thinking of with updates with Season 5, right now, I'm being a little bit cagey of like, I need to leave some reaction time for my team and myself to like really look at Season 4 of what are the things that we need to react to quickly that would be the most benefit, the biggest bang for your buck in Season 5, for example. But thinking a little bit more long-term, like things that aren't immediate reactions to Season 4. I would say, we're definitely taking a stab at it in Season 4, but I think that there's still going to be room to try and make the end game better for longer. Like have that tail feel good for a longer period of time and have a little bit more refinement in that section of the game, so to speak. So we're thinking and talking a lot about that because it's been a thing that we've been, asked about by the community basically since we launched. Is like better end game. And so that's something that's on our mind. Also on the class side, personally, one of the things that's on my mind a lot is trying to catch up other classes to Barbarian because Barbarians have more weapons. This has been a big thorn in our side for a very long time of that they kind of have 2 class mechanics and everybody else has 1. And so our current plan is to kind of juice up those other classes so that they're really crazy, impactful, and good and feel awesome so that they kind of make up for the lack of aspects that Barbarians get. And itemization makes Barbarians stronger. Like there's a bunch of things that having more items makes difficult to balance, I would say. And so really having a firm, solid answer to that. We kind of addressed it a little bit in Season 4 with the Necromancer. is our first whack at this, where we just juiced the Book of the Dead and made it crazy, powerful, and good, and tried to do it in a way that wasn't just numbers, like make it cool, right? This is something that I told my people a lot to focus on. And so we're going to see how that goes, but I want to do that for the other classes, right? So that's kind of one of the big things at the top of our mind on the class side.
So with in-game... Oh, sorry, go, Ghazi.
I was just curious, like we talk about end game, that's the focus. End game, end game, end game. I'm curious about the definition. Like, what are we talking about when we say end game? Because that's different from, it's very subjective, right? Are we talking about level 50 to 100, or are we talking about post 100?
Yep. So funny you asked. I think Joe P mentioned it in an earlier interview. We used to think of endgame as everything after the campaign was our original definition when we launched the game, and we had to change our definition because that wasn't what players were thinking and saying, and the way that just people talked about our game. They thought endgame was post 100 or maybe world tier 4, right? And right now, I would say it's still not exactly perfect of what we think of when we say endgame. I think people still have various opinions. My definition of endgame is probably something close to world tier 4, and when that starts, or when you get to level 100 is an obvious benchmark that people can have. But in my mind, it's when you have access to all of the activities that you can do in the game, which to me would now probably be whenever you go into the pit. Because there's no activity after that is like a new activity that you could not access at all. So that's what I think of when I think of endgame. But I think if you ask 10 different people, you may get like 3 or 4 different answers. But that's kind of how we think about it and talk about it mostly on the team. Either that or level 100, if you want to think about it that way.
So how do you deal with the difficulty of creating in-game when players are able to consume the content quicker than almost any developer is going to be able to produce the in-game, while also shrinking the beginning portion of the game? You level to 100 faster than you ever have. You're able to get into these in-game activities faster than ever, but you're also at a deficit in terms of in-game content, so you're developing it while people are consuming it faster than you can. How do you resolve these issues?
Oh, God. This is a very long answer, and I could go into it for a long time, so I'll try to keep it brief. It's a very difficult problem, and it is one that I think every ARPG has, and it's one that we all have to kind of live with and mitigate, but there isn't a perfect forever solution. Because really what you're saying is, and this is like the two things that are competing, right, is players want content, and our game is a power fantasy. That's what ARPGs are, right? We sell you on, you do things to become more powerful, to have a new mountain to climb, to be more powerful, to have a new mountain to climb. Problem is, there are only so many mountains that we can make as a development team, right? Because the mountains are usually content. And so the difficulty that I think every ARPG runs into is you can only create so many mountains. So the first thing we try to do is create as many mountains as we can, right? Have as many various endgame activities and things for you to do that are interesting and awesome. And then, do that for as long as we can. But like you said, people are crazy and they consume content really, really quick. Some of them do, some of them not so much. And we have to balance between those two player types, which is a whole nother conversation. But then on the other side, for the people that can consume that content quickly, we want to make sure that there's things for them to do that are interesting and meaningful, right? And so this is why you see a very common way that ARPGs are designed is that we use random generated dungeons and random generated content for the end game. And why we do things like scale things either pretty hard or infinitely so that you have a challenge against your player power, right? Like player power goes up, you need something to fight against it as you're getting better. If you don't have something to fight against it, then really your answers are like make another character and do the journey again, or you get bored, leave, come back later, right? And those are kind of the options that a player has, or go against infinitely scaling content. That's kind of like the box that we're in when we're designing, and a lot of our work as designers is how do we make fun content and resolve these issues as best we can. A perfect solution requires like a paradigm shift, I think, of like you have to kind of change what an ARPG is and like make your game ARPG, but also a little bit of something else so that you don't have to worry about this problem. But in an ARPG space, I think this is kind of just what it is and how people progress through it. It is a challenge that we're forever going to have. And so you're going to see us, kind of bounce back and forth of like infinitely scaling content, but also matching that with milestone content or aspirational content is another word that people like to use that I like of, like Uber Lilith or these things where it's like, I get this thing, I see this thing, it's a fixed difficulty. I want to get good enough to beat that. And then I feel good and I can either stop or try and go to the next thing until there's things that run out. And then I'm happy and I leave happy, right? Our goal at the higher level is that you leave happy. right? And whether that means you're doing aspirational or you do forever content for a while and then you kind of churn out, we want to make sure both of those experiences feel good.
Sure.
That's fair. Listening to that answer, I mean, do you feel like, or would it be fair to say that the team's focus on effort right now has gone from the early stage of focusing on new player acquisition to more of an returning player focus and end-game replayability and longevity of the player base? Is that where the focus is? Would that be fair to say?
We're focused on both. I think my team right now is focused on the latter part, but remember, Diablo 4 is a large team with many different sub-teams. I'm on the live team. So my focus right now is kind of endgame because that's just what we see as a place we could do better. But there are people on the team absolutely focused on new player experience, new player, how they interact with the game, returning players that have, they played the original campaign and then left and they're coming back. That's a discussion that we're having as well of how do we make that experience the best that we can. So there's actually a lot of different classes of players and the types of people that play Diablo 4 because it's such a large game. We're trying to appeal to many different types of people that play RPGs and even those that this is their introductory game. So our task is a little different than some other games where, they have a more specific focus. We try to grab it all. We're greedy, but we want to make sure that our game's good for both parties. And that does mean there's some sacrifices sometimes, but we really are like trying to make it good for all of them.
That's fair.
It's a hard problem, but that is actually what we're trying to do. Like high level vision.
Let's just move on to the next question since we're kind of limited on time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about overworld content since that is literally the identity defining for Diablo 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the question we have is, what are the team's thoughts on the potentials of strongholds and bosses having a bigger role to play moving forward?
Oh, strongholds and bosses. I guess I'll ask you a question back. I can give you a very easy answer, and that answer will be we think they're cool and we could work on them. Or I can give you like something I think is a lot more interesting and maybe an in-depth discussion. I'll leave it up to you guys. But
let's go for the latter.
Yeah.
All right. Because I find this very interesting. Why strongholds, why we design them and what we think about them in Bora bosses. So I think there's a concept that's very interesting. I would advise you and any of your followers who really want to get into game design or want to talk better about game design. There was a really great GDC presentation made by a guy named Alex Jaffe. He's from Riot, actually. And he gave one of the best presentations I've ever seen on game design. And he gave the presentation on something called cursed problems in game design. And I promise this will lead back to strongholds very directly. But what a cursed problem is in game design is this idea that when you make a game of a certain archetype, you immediately make a bunch of promises to the player, and these promises come with problems that we call cursed problems. These things are so fundamental to the foundation of your game that you can't get away from them, and they're kind of your partner forever or weight on your back that you have to deal with that you never get rid of, but you can mitigate. I'll give an example of a cursed problem in another genre in game. I used to work on Heroes of the Storm. It's a MOBA, right? Like League of Legends. If you ever played League of Legends, you'll hear this complaint a lot of matchmaking and playing a team-based game by having individual progression, right? The promise that you make when you play a MOBA or a team-based game is that you are playing with other people. But one of the big things that they sell you on when you play the game is that you have a ranking system that's based on your personal improvement. So you're being ranked individually, but you go into a team game with 9 other people, and those other people can interact, and you can have a game where you couldn't have won no matter how good you are because those people impact your performance. And so you commonly get the complaint of, hey, I went into a team-based game, I did well, but my teammates suck and I'm mad because I lost rank points, right?
I played
very
League,
common.
Sure.
This is a cursed problem of matchmaking-based, team-based games where your motivation that we promise you is individual performance. How about Diablo? Let's tie it back to Diablo. A cursed problem, I would argue, in ARPGs like Diablo and any other game, you'll probably have seen this problem, is that they are games of efficiency. We promise you player power is a big reason why you play these games, is you want to go in, you start off as this peon person that kind of sucks and isn't very strong, and you grow into this really crazy master of magic or strength or whatever that can do incredible things, right? And the way that we deliver you on that promise is we give you power as you play the game more and progress through the activities, usually in the form of gear, but also in other ways too, right? Skill points, Paragon, whatever it is. What that translates to is that anything that you are doing in the game that isn't progressing your power is very hard to sell a player on,
Sure.
to make them want to do it. And it's even harder to sell them if it's not a repeatable activity that they can keep doing to get stronger and stronger. The way that I describe curse problems or think about it is like when you ask me, hey, Adam, what do you think of strongholds or world bosses or Uber Lilith balance or a whole lot of other problems? I would think of these curse problems like a tree. And the curse problem is actually the trunk, the center of the game, what the game actually is and why you come to play it. And you're asking me about a leaf at the very edge of the branch. And so I can give an answer like, yeah, the leaf, yeah, it's cool. We could work on it. But like really the leaf connecting to the branch connecting to the trunk, this is what's actually causing the thing that you're asking the question about, right? So when it comes to strongholds, why do you ask me the question like, hey, what about strongholds? Can we make them better? The reason why it's a question that people ask, I think, is because strongholds are intended, and why they are cool and why they go against the rest of our game and why it's really hard for us is that they are meant to be one-shot, awesome, kind of story-based, really handcrafted, curated content, right? I would equate this to Uber Lilith statues, where we got this question the other day.
Sure.
The campaign experience, we get a question. These are all actually the same question, which is, hey, you people on D4 made this one-shot experience that we really love and is cool. We want to do it more. The problem is the moment you cross that line from one-shotting and it being cool to being a repeatable activity, now that activity is competing with everything else in the game that is repeatable content. Because now Strongholds has to compete against Helltide, Nightmare Dungeons, The Pit, Gathering Uniques, all of that, or it has to fit in there in some way.
So one question about that then. So what makes
Yeah.
Strongholds different? Like, why can't we do an Uber version of a Stronghold since people say they want to replay it, but we can do an Uber version of bosses that are already in the game? So we can do the level...
We absolutely, yeah. I understand your question. We absolutely can, is the answer. But then you've changed it. The fundamental relationship that you have as a player with Strongholds is different now. You've changed it from one shot, this is a cool experience that's very unique, and that is what the fantasy is of people that like it. Now you've changed that to repeatable content that you're going to do 10, 20, 100 times over. And the thing is, a lot of content, and this is where it's kind of a curse problem in RPG, we think of every content type that we add this way. Is it repeatable? Is it not? And the way that you design that content is very different. Because if it's repeatable, that means that you have to design the content in such a way that it is fun 100 or 1,000 times. That puts a lot more design constraint and limitations of what you can make that content. As an example, or many examples when we launch the game, you can even think of some when you think of your experience with the game. When you do something 500 times, you care about things that you wouldn't care about if you did it one time. This is why, for example, I get questions a lot of can you let us reset boss rooms? Why do you want to reset boss rooms? It's because you do it 500 times and it sucks to do that every single time. If you had to do it 1 or 2 times ever, you wouldn't care very much. Why did you have to ride your horse to Nightmare Dungeons when we launched the game?
It's fair.
It was fun the first time, world building, immersion, really cool. Doing it 500 times because that's all that you're doing at your end game, not so fun.
So would you be concerned? Would you be concerned about the same issue with the new 200 bosses? If, let's say, you took some of the rewards, okay, and added like Uber, this just for the sake of the debate here. So let's say we wanted Uber Strongholds, and you say, well, you know, DM, you liked it the first time, you might not like it the 100th time, and I say, fair enough. But then I come back with you and say, okay, well, what if we took some of the rewards that I would either get from the pit, like a grab bag? We take some of the pit rewards, we take some of the Uber level 200 rewards, and we throw almost like a world boss loot pinata as an option to be one of these mountains that you mentioned earlier. Maybe we don't want to make it the best thing. Maybe we want to make it a breakup of the experience so that we can get basically the same resources we got to get literally anyway from something else, but it gives us variety in terms of gameplay. Now, I'm not arguing this is the best way to go with the game. I'm just curious about the thought process behind that.
I think that's a good question. The answer is yes, we can. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Usually it doesn't. The reason why, in my experience designing ARPGs for a while now, is it's really hard to tell somebody, hey, you have option A and option B. Option A is 100% efficient. Option B is 70% efficient. What does 100% of players do? Maxroll makes guides. What is the best Nightmare Dungeon you want to do? Everybody makes guides. What is the quickest way to do the thing? What is the most efficient? People are going to do the thing. And it's not like if something is 100% efficient versus 50%, that 50% of players do the 50% and the other half do the 100. That's not how it works out in player behavior. It's 99% of people do the 100% efficient.
That's a fair
thing, right?
counter. That's a fair counter.
I'm not sure I agree entirely. Like I'm a player that I guess I would qualify as a blaster, not a casual player. But I feel like what makes an ARPG great is to make people distracted from the fact that they are playing an ARPG. Because in reality, an ARPG game is honestly the very definition of insanity. We are doing the same thing over and over and over again with the only goal of improving our character to continue doing the same thing over and over again to do the same thing. And the best ARPGs, the game that you can play, would be a game where you are distracted from the fact that you're doing the same thing over and over again. So having options, whether or not they are slightly less rewarding, is another part. That's another topic. But the fact that you have options to engage with for the sake of in-game replayability, longevity, would allow you to be distracted from that fact and actually enjoy your time. That's the way I see it. So I'm not sure I entirely agree with that.
I completely agree with you. I want to premise this. I'm presenting to you the problem. I'm not saying that a cursed problem has no solutions and no ways to make it better. The bulk of my time is spent trying to answer the questions that you guys just asked and do it in a way that does make it better, even though I know it's a problem that will never be completely, absolutely solved, right? We do things like this. Some ways, for example, that we get you to do a variety of activities, because we do want you to, is like a common strategy is we gate certain rewards behind certain activities, which makes you need to go and do multiple things, right? Like you have Glyph XP in Nightmare Dungeons, you have the Helltide, the Cinders and Helltide that you couldn't really get very easily. Like we have things that are special to them to make you go around. I think a better solution, we've kind of moved a little bit more in this, is you can get things, you get some activities or materials or whatever from many places. There is one place that is the most efficient, but you're getting pseudo efficiency somewhere else, and that feels really good. Example of this would be doing Helltides with Whispers, right? If you're doing Helltides and you want Varshan materials for Whispers, double dipping on that feels really good as a player. And we want to do that and do that more. And that, I think, is kind of an answer for your Uber Strongholds question. I'm not saying, by the way, my answer is not we can't do Uber Strongholds because of these problems. Sure. What I'm saying is I'm trying to teach you why it's not so easy as just like, hey, make Uber Strongholds replayable and now everybody's going to love them immediately, right? We were changing a content type from a one-shot. This is kind of similar to the campaign idea, right? Of changing the campaign experience from a one-shot to a feels good 100 times. We have to think about that. We think about that content differently now.
Totally.
And that requires a little more thought and care, not just in rewards, but how it feels to go through it over and over again, right? Because it's fixed.
That's fair
we
enough.
need to add some randomness to make it feel better as you're going through it over and over. It's just there's more problems that we have to solve. Right?
Okay, it's a consumable. It's designed consumable. You make it into something repetitive. It changes the fundamentals of how you originally created it. I can understand the take. I appreciate that. I'll move the conversation on here so we can get into some of the other questions we still have here. So currently, build variety in the game is mostly designed around item modifiers. So like unique items, lidless wallets being one example. It just fundamentally changes the way a skill works here. Has there been discussion from the team around modifying skills potentially outside of unique items, like within Paragon boards, other inventory-based items, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. Fun fact, when we were originally designing things in the game, a lot of the changing of the skills was actually in the skill tree and in we called them A/B choices, but the different upgrades you could get for your skill. The original thought behind it was like, you can make your, frozen orb, like option A is like way different than option B, where they're almost like different use cases for the skill. Right. And we moved a little bit away from that. Some of them are still a little transformative. I think that we can make them a little bit more so in the skill tree as we do in the future. That's one way that I think we can make the skill tree interesting without introducing a bunch of complexity. My favorite example I give to people on my team is a kick, even though kick isn't that popular of a skill. But the difference between baseline kick and power kick, the upgrade where it changes into basically a core skill where it uses all your resource and does a boatload of damage to a person. You went from thinking of, this skill is like you think of the geometry of the game and kicking enemies into walls. And it was too complex, I think, a little bit for what we launched with the speed of our game. But the idea was there of like one way is you're playing 4D chess and you're rewarded. And the other way is you chase a resource and you just, this is Sparta somebody and kill them for 1 billion damage, right? It's completely different fantasies and ways that you interact with the skill. I think we could probably do a little bit more there with other skills to kind of make them transformative like that. We ended up doing more legendaries and uniques as the space that we do that because we knew that items were so important and being excited for a late game item to drop was was a very core part of the game. We've kind of now made that a lot better with like greater affixes, for example, and things in season 4. So I think there is more room to make transformative upgrades in other places than items. But I also am very comfortable with the system that we have now, and I kind of like it. It gives you obvious things to chase with items, and it feels good to get an item that is a big upgrade that changes how you play. So I guess I'd be open to feedback from people. Like, is there a place that you think is superior to items to get these kinds of effects? Like, is it cooler to have it be deterministic in the Paragon board versus you're farming for something and you see the moment that it drops that transforms your gameplay?
I mean, I'd be in the boat of saying, make the skill twig grow into a tree. That's kind of the boat that I'm sitting in. But and I also understand from the interview you had with Rax how that is. There's reasons for that, to keeping that simplistic. So it makes sense to have it in the endgame version of something dropping, or a gem, or whatever you want to go for, a power or unique item.
Yeah.
But how? Unless you have any follow-up questions, that DM, I wanted to ask you about the how that fits into the philosophy of a lead class designer when it comes to the fantasies. These altering skills or uniques, whatever you want to go for, would have an impact on the class design.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure.
I'm going to try to reword that. That was horrible.
Yeah. No worries.
No, I was wondering how these unique items or skill altering modifiers, no matter where you get them, how that would impact the class design when it comes to focusing on keeping or maintaining the specific fantasies of classes.
Yeah. So when I think of a build, or our team thinks of a build, we try and think of the entire package and we compare it to the whole other package of a class. I don't think of a build like, I don't know, Frozen Orb, let's say, right? When I think of like the total power and coolness and strength and all of that, there's a journey that needed to be made, but I think of it as you end with all the things, right? You end with the conjurations, casting frozen orbs, and you're blowing up everything on your screen. It's awesome, right? So when we think about like designing a new class, or when we're first designing these classes, we have to think of, how do we make an interesting and good player journey from the beginning when you first use a skill, making that as impactful and cool as possible, while at the same time balancing against you need to leave room for growth and making things crazy and awesome to make it better. Some skills are easier to do than others with that, I would say. We definitely had a lot of things before the game came out, discussions about like, hey, this skill it feels really crappy early on. And we're like, yeah, it gets really crazy later on though. They're like, yeah, but who's going to pick it up if it feels really shitty early on, right? Like, you have to balance the two things. And that one is like, it's just a bunch of discussions and iteration, even when the game is live, of people complain about it, right? And we're like, yeah, we agree. And then we change it. Example, that would be like Barbs and Druids for a while have been complaining that early game kind of sucks, but then late game they're powerhouses, and that's kind of been the identity. And so we've been like alleviating over and over again of like, basic skills are a little better. They're a little better. We don't want to go too far, but we keep making them better, right? So that's kind of how we think of it. We think of the whole package and we try to make sure that your journey is enjoyable and good. And that's true, by the way, with items and tempering and stuff, right? We tried to create that journey and itemization. That was the point of season 4, because we think that's what makes a good ARPG experience.
Absolutely.
So we're approaching about 10 minutes or so left here, right around there. So we do have some rapid fire section, which, I mean, not all of these are just yes and no type things. So you feel free to talk about these. Don't have to just be like one word answers, but we have about 15, 20 of these. I'm going to try to blast through that. These are mostly primary questions grabbed from YouTube comments, grabbed from the chats, etc. The community just continues to ask over and over again. Some of these may have already been asked. Apologize if they have, but just because they've been spammed quite a bit. One of the ones that we've seen quite often is people are asking about raids. So we have overworld bosses, right? Pretty cool. People like them. It's like a big loot pinata every now and then. Is there any plans of further developments, or have you guys thought about potentially of raids like 8-man, 10-man, related to clans, larger size, basically?
Yeah. First, I would say this is just Adam's personal opinion, not the team, because I know everybody has different thoughts on it, but I think raids are interesting and cool. I think that they would present quite a few hurdles for us to overcome that make things tough. I think they're probably doable, but as an example of some of the things I think of right away that are like, oh my God, this is scary, is like, even now we have a problem where we're always competing against solo players' efficiency versus group play efficiency. There's a lot of people that play Diablo and RPGs that really have a strong identity with wanting to play by themselves and not be required to go into a group. And if we put in this type of content where we say, hey, you must go into a group to play this, then we have to reconcile that of like, hey, how do we either balance that around, can solo players do it as well? And if they do, then why is it group content? Or yeah, too bad, you have to also be in a group to engage with this. And then that puts a lot of pressure on the rewards for that content, because if we make the rewards something that a solo player also needs, then we're making them go into a group when they may not want to.
Sure.
But if we make the solo, or we make the rewards for that type of content the other way, where it's not something you need, then why do people do it in the first place? So there's a lot of questions there that are noodly, that are tough to answer.
Sure.
But I'm really just describing the problem space. I do think, though, that overall, the idea of getting with a group of your buddies or random strangers and doing like a 10-man fight on a huge, like, dungeon or whatever with a big boss at the end that requires mechanics, like, that is really cool and appealing. So
then
that's kind of how I think of it.
So I got 2 more quick ones here, and I'll pass off to Ghazi. So in that case, then, if there's issues related to like forcing group play, basically, let's go the other way and say solo self-found mode. Now that trading is more common here with legendary items, etc., have we seen the potential for maybe adding an additional game mode or other game modes?
I think it'd be cool. Nothing to announce today.
Fair enough. Next one, PvP. There is a small but very passionate PvP community that is curious about further plans involving content specifically for these groups of people. I promised them I'd ask this one for them. What are your thoughts on PvP within the game?
Sure. Don't have anything to announce when it comes to PvP specific content. I would say I think we would be more interested from those people. Like, what would they want to see from us? I would actually be curious about, of like, what do you want? Do you want like an arena type system where we pre-program your gear for you? Do you like open world? Do you want some type of different progression system? Kind of like the group versus solo play, the PvP versus PvE discussion is a little similar, of like, the more that we emphasize it or give unique rewards to it, the more that we're saying to everybody that doesn't want to do that, hey, you must do this to progress your character. And that's back to that, cursed problem, trunk theory. Like,
sure,
everything is about power progression. So the moment we put power in an activity that's a little more niche, then we can really make people unhappy if they have to engage with that. So like, what would they want to see? Do they want to see a better way of interacting with PvP? Is it just that the balance is crazy? Because I think that people kind of embrace the crazy balance in Diablo PvP.
Sure.
But that's where I think I would start the discussion.
Thanks for the answer. Gotcha.
That's fair. When it comes to these questions, these rapid fire questions, we got them from chat and from YouTube. And one of the questions that we wanted us to ask was, how can we see how long people have been offline in our clans?
Clan management issues currently.
Yeah. I'm not involved with that group, so I can't give it. I actually don't know, but I feel like that's very reasonable. I think we could bring that back to the team pretty easily. I will say we do have a team that works on like UX issues, user experience issues, and they are the ones that kind of look at stuff like that, like the ideas that we get over like group finder or armory party finder, this type of support. We have a team that's looking at it. I know that they're working on stuff, but I actually don't have complete insight into what they're doing, but that seems very reasonable to me.
Stuff. I like it. The next question is actually about pets in game. And we're talking about non-combat pets, ranging from cosmetics to maybe loot pets that might only loot gold or something. Is that something that's been discussed? If so, what can you share?
We have discussed it. I think it'd be cool. Don't have anything to share.
All right. Next question would be, sorry?
Oh, go on. I was just going to read the next one.
All right, it's just DPS meter and dummies. I would love to see that, because you can't really see it when you have a minion army hitting a dummy. I'd like to have DPS meters. Is that something we're going to see in the future?
Yeah, think it's cool. Don't have anything to announce.
Fair enough.
But I'm actually thinking a little bit more about that. And maybe feedback would be useful of like, is it really only on dummies that you want to do it to test builds, or would you want to see it in the rest of the game? DPS meters are kind of notorious in other game types, but I'm not sure that we have the same problems.
Sure.
Of people being upset with each other for not doing as much damage and all that kind of stuff. But
fair enough.
I feel like it'd probably be fine, or at least for a personal one.
I know this one's probably like you can't go anywhere with this, but offline mode, is there any potential for an offline mode in Diablo 4 at any point?
I have not heard any discussions about it. I would doubt it.
Okay.
I think that one, I'm a little more sure I could say, but I don't see it on the horizon. But
fair enough.
Also, I'm not in charge of those kinds of decisions.
Glyph leveling and quality of life. Is there any potential for glyph leveling outside of Nightmare Dungeons? Are we going to add experience to glyphs elsewhere in the game?
We've talked about it a bit. Nothing to announce. I think, kind of going back to the idea with Helltides and Whispers, I think it is cool to have a less efficient way to do something while you're being efficient doing something else. That's my personal opinion, though, and kind of what I feel. But I'm not on the systems team and don't know the nuances of glyph leveling specifically and why we keep it in one place. But I wouldn't be surprised, I guess is what I would say. But I don't have a guarantee there.
How about things like surprise events, like i.e. Goblin Vaults from D3, for example? You get the ring, you go to secondary, they can pop out, or pour those to other types of things. Any surprise ambush related event type of stuff? We have the Goblin Packs, for instance, which is pretty cool in D4, rare but cool.
Yeah, well, so I say we've added a couple in season 4, kind of mini events where like you have a chance when you kill an elite and it'll spawn into like a ton of gold or a ton of materials or things, or give you way more than normal. We like the idea of surprise events. I think you can expect us to make more in the future. That is one way, kind of like what I think it was Gazzy, I think you said, of like we want to break up the monotony and we're trying to make sure that it feels different even though you're doing the same thing. And I think surprise events is one of the ways that we do that. Sometimes it's more successful than others, but it's definitely something that we want to continue to chase because we think overall it's good. It's just about how exactly to implement it.
That's fair. What's the team's position on support builds? Like back in D3, we have CDPS, Demon Hunters, and Barb style builds. Do they have a place in D4 moving forward?
That's a good question. I think so, but we have to be careful. We were a lot more scared about it when we launched the game. I remember people kept asking me, like, Adam, can we make more support builds, make more things? Of like cross synergy is really cool, and I agree it's cool. The other side of that is kind of that issue we deal with forever of group versus solo play. Is that the better we make a support build, the more we're saying the best way to play this game is to go with 4 people, support your friends, and you get multiplicative, massively increased amounts of output, right? So I think we do want it. We have it a little bit with Barbarian Shouts, right? And we've even added some legendaries that do it. Like there's a Druid one that turns your Blood Howl into an AoE buff. But I don't think it's one of those we have to walk the line very carefully, I think, because it can be very detrimental to the game if we go too far.
All right.
But I'm not against it as an idea at all.
Okay. Jumping over to the next one real quick with opening community events. Way back to like Blizzard, AQ openings in World of Warcraft, for example. Community designs a legendary. Any sort of that community events surrounding those things. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it'd be awesome. I'm not against it at all, but those are checks that I can't cash. So, yeah, I would love to. I'm not going to make it, but yes, I would love an AQ event like that in D4 or something, or even community making a legendary. Oh, how scared am I of that? Or unique? I don't know, probably, but we can find a way to balance it. I don't know. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be neat. Yeah, I'm on board.
I'm going to throw you a quick one with something that's close to my heart, and that's map overlay. And before you say immersion, I'd like to say that a lot of people will say, let us play the game we want to. What's the thoughts on map overlay moving forward?
This is personal Adam thoughts, not company thoughts, because everybody has different opinions, I think. And we've talked about map overlay internally quite a bit. I think map overlay, it's one of those where there's such obvious pros and cons, and I think different types of players really want to engage in different ways. I personally am not completely against a map overlay being in the game, but I understand why there are people that feel strongly that we really don't want to try and make a game where you're looking at your map the whole time and not all of this beautiful world and art and things that we've created to try and immerse the player, and then they're so into the systems and the efficiency game that we pull them out of it. And I think it kind of goes back to kind of what you said of like, ARPGs, we really want you to, we know it's an efficiency game, but we don't want it to feel that exposed all the time that you must feel pressured to do things perfectly all the time. And a map overlay pushes that pretty hard. So I see both sides. I think I'm a little bit personally in favor of just having it because people want it, but I understand it changes the game pretty fundamentally for a lot of people, and there's a pressure there now. It's kind of like DPS meters in many games too, I would equate it to. Like the moment you introduce that, you kind of can't go back, and you've changed how people interact with your game forever. And so even if people want it, I see why it's a tough topic.
We're actually doing pretty good on time. We're almost through the rapid fire. We've got a few more here, and then we pretty much are GG out the door here. So ultimate button, this is something that gets brought up a lot. People have asked, can we get a separate button for the ultimate?
Yeah. Maybe. I'll explain
Maybe.
the problem space of why. Yeah. So when we're thinking about Diablo and why we don't have more extra buttons or like an ultimate button or whatever, is that we thought heavily and worked long and hard deciding the number of buttons that you're going to have total on your bar at all. And those buttons were determined by thinking of how many different actions do we want a player to worry about at any given time. And right now we have, you have evade, you have potion, you have your regular ones on your bar, and then your core and your basic, right? If you have a basic. Adding another button is something that we could do. I mean, controller issues aside and making that feel good. It's a matter of how complex do we want to expect every single player to interact. And at the time at launching the game, we wrestled back and forth with this a lot. And at the time, our idea was we would rather have something like an evade button that really everybody can use and makes the game feel very different. And it's kind of like, this is very different than other RPGs, than a specific ultimate button. There's also would need to be a lot of rebalancing of ultimates when we fully expect people to have one versus that they can choose whether or not they do. That work we could do, I think. It's more of like, do I want to balance and design everything assuming a player has an ultimate in addition to all of their other skills, and what that means to how we have to change ultimates or do other things. I think it's doable, but I don't know that I'm very excited about the prospect unless there's a very clear win.
Okay, can understand that. A couple just fast ones, don't have to go in depth on, just some transmog things. People are asking maybe a color wheel for transmogs as opposed to just like red, green, blue. Any thoughts on adding like a color wheel?
Yeah, it seems cool.
Okay.
It's not my team, but yeah.
Non-horse mounts. Pretty much all the mounts are horses. Can we get like a maggot or anything out of spider?
I think we should, and I wouldn't be surprised if we did it, but I'm not involved in those conversations. But I think I personally feel like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm glad we agree on that one. Okay, wings, kind of controversial, but a million people ask me wings. Are we ever going to see wings in D4?
Yeah, that's a little more controversial. I would say I don't know about the future. I can explain a little bit of where we're at now, and I'm not even completely involved in this. This is a little bit of my opinion because I didn't make these decisions, but Return to Darkness was one of our big guiding philosophies when we were making D4 up to launch. And this idea that, hey, this game is going back to kind of D1, D2 roots of being scary and a little more, gruesome and dark and dreary. And we even with the combat, that's why we have evade, is like you have to dodge attacks and really plan because this world is dangerous. In some ways, we've learned that players, want to blast and they don't care as much. As we over-indexed a little bit on it. Sure. But it is still something that we care about. So like now before Wings was kind of in that, it's making the game a little bit, it doesn't fit the vibe we're going for, but we've moved a bit. But have we moved enough that Wings are okay now? I don't know.
Fair enough.
It's like I think we're right there. I could see it being either way, but that just explains kind of how we got here. So
fair enough. I get that. We only got like 3 questions left here, really. So the last transmog related or cosmetic related question is, can we get cosmetics potentially for minions? I know Ghazi probably would like this one.
I think it would be cool. It's a lot harder to do for minions than for players, though, or even like wings, because you can have 1 million minions on your screen, and how loud that is a concern. But I don't think it's an impossibility. I'd like to see it. I think it'd be cool. Same with Druid transform transmogs. I think would be cool, but that's just my opinion.
All right. Go for it, Ghazi.
Speaking of being scary, what about a unicorn level? Cow level? Is that ever something that's going to happen? Because we've all been hunting for it.
A unicorn level? That sounds neat. I don't know what you're talking about with the other one.
There it is. And shout out to Rax. Uber Tomb Lord win?
I think it'd be cool. I'm down. I don't know, whatever people want to fight. I mean, we could make it.
All right, and we pretty much are hitting the end of the time here. I want to thank you for your time. I will submit there's a couple other there like bug reports that I'll just DM over as well, and we'll skip those ones. And we just hit our 45 minutes, so I appreciate the time. Thanks for answering all the questions. And we actually managed to get through pretty much the entire list, including the rapid fire. So you done good, Sad.
That's great.
I appreciate it. Any last words or anything you want to say?
I would say, first, thanks to both of you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you.
We really enjoy these conversations. I look forward to doing more. For everybody else, one of the things I'm really passionate about, like first, go listen to that presentation that I talked about on cursed problems. One of my goals with getting in front of people and talking with them, and I've done this ever since I started as a developer. You can go look at interviews with me years ago from Heroes, but I like having better discussions with you all and with players that are a little more informed. So as people get passionate and want to learn about game design, it's easy just to be like, hey, why don't you add this? And we can answer those questions. But I like more in-depth ones, and we do on the team of like, hey, why does this work the way it does? And can we find a way to make it work and get what we want, right? Like when you counter back at me with like the strongholds question, like, can't we, okay, Adam, I listened to you. I understand your problem space. Now that I've thought about it, can we do this and why or why not? Like that to me is a better discussion and a better culture, a better world, really, if I want to get sappy, of like, be informed when talking about things and care about it and think about it and don't just blast like, hey, just do this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a game dev either. It's not like I would.
Yeah, and I'm not saying everyone has to be a game dev. I just mean like if you care enough to really want to know, like, think about it and have real discussions. And so I want to be a force for that, I guess, in the community. And I think other people on our team do as well. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the time. So enjoy talking with you both.
I enjoyed
appreciate
that
you joining.
It was actually nice seeing the thought process behind it, and then like it kind of in real time, because normally it's like you make a video, maybe you get a response about it or something, but it is kind of nice to see like in real time the feedback, because you're right, just during the very brief conversation about strongholds, like it did actually, I'm like, oh, it makes sense, it's a consumable design thing, kind of hard to turn into a repetitive etc. So thank you for opening up about that. Guys, you got any last comments or anything you want to say?
Not really. I mean, I know you're a minion lover, so I want to get in on a deep dive talk with you someday about that. Could do that on stream on the Tavern Talk someday as well.
Maybe we can someday. No, yeah, I my roots are in RTS, where I manage 1 million little units, and I love minion stuff and everything. So
sounds good, Ben. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah,
cheers.
thank you both very much.
We'll let you head on out the door here. We'll wrap up. And all right, we're going to cut back to the other screen and then cut the audio, and I will be back in just a moment, everybody. Bye-bye. Sorry. Yeah, I'm back. I was All right. So we're back. We got through basically all of the questions that we were able to dig up that got honed down. So there were some in there that are like bug reports and some other stuff, but we were able to get a significant amount of the questions during the rapid fire. I think he went like 4 or 5 minutes over time as well, which was pretty cool. So that was nice. But interview is completed. W if you like the interview, L if you hated it and you think we all suck. And that was pretty much the GG on there. I am actually curious what question you guys were the most interested in. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll put up a straw poll and we'll see how you guys actually felt about it. I'll put in a few of them. Well, that seems like pretty good feedback on it. A couple people hated it. Other than that, it seemed like pretty good. I'll put a straw poll up. We can actually get like a response so you guys can see in there. Thanks for the 5. Okay, option 1. I'm going to add a bunch of options in here. I'll put a link and you guys can vote on it. Was great, was good, was mid, was bad, and then was horrible. So there's going to be a variety of these. Bang, launch that. And let's see what the feedback of it actually is. And I'm actually pretty satisfied myself personally. I thought it went pretty decent. So I'm surprised we were able to get through all the questions. I will admit I was a little worried we were not going to have enough time to get through all of the questions. But we kind of blasted through there at the end, which was nice. Hopefully we didn't go too fast and that we were able to actually keep up with it here. Okay, let me go ahead and grab, there's the straw poll. Boom, throw that on screen. Bang. Okay, here you go. So I'm going to put the links in the chat. There you go. Go ahead and vote on how you felt about the interview. There you go. Mostly positive response. About 8 or 9% of people didn't like it. I'm glad we spent the time we did going through the prep, yeah? Yeah, I thought Adam did a really good job explaining the philosophy behind it and like tackling the questions that we were kind of curious about. Like he didn't shy away from the questions. There wasn't very many like, oh, I can't really answer that. Like it was, he actually kind of like did his best to actually take a shot at them, which I'm glad for. I was hoping it was going to be something like that. I was didn't want to be asking questions that weren't going to get anywhere. Okay. That seems like pretty good reception. Now interview the other interviewers about the interview. Yeah, do we need interviewception here? Now we need Riker and Rax, and we all just sit in a group interviewing each other about how we felt about each one of our interviews for the ultimate live stream reactception. Enjoyed the discussion on philosophy, etc. Why bother otherwise? I do enjoy actually hearing the thought process behind when they're developing the game itself. Actually, though, a roundtable before Season 4 launch would be nice. Yeah, that'd be cool. Shout out to my boy Ghazi. Also, let me put a link to Ghazi's channel if you're looking to watch the VOD itself. We will be posting just the cut out interview of that on Ghazi TV's channel as well. So I'm going to have a link to that I'll put down below. Here you go. Otherwise, you can see it here in the live stream VODs, both on Twitch and YouTube. You, Ghazi, Crip, Asmon, Go, Woody, Joe, and Rax, go. Dude, that's a ton of people in a round table. Hope everyone listens to Adam's feedback and what kind of questions asked for the next round of interviews. It is harder. I feel like it's harder than it seems to prepare questions that you think can actually get answers. Because when you're asking them, you try to do things that are going to open up the conversation and actually, because the point is you want to be able to hear, right? You want to actually be able to hear what people are saying or what they're thinking when they're developing the game. You don't just want to hear like, are charms coming to the game, yes or no? Like you kind of do want to hear the thought process behind it. So you try to balance those with just getting factual responses as well. People are saying horrible or bad or just ask those in the chat. I mean, there's a pretty limited number of people that were being a problem in chat. I feel like everyone was actually pretty nice in chat for the most bit. Call Rax for general discussion. That is up to him. If he wants to, he can ring me. Six hours of Asmongo reacting. Yeah, you guys can catch this interview also in Asmongo's React for the next 12 hours, maybe. What up, Waffle Stomper? Dude, that name. Ghazi was good in this one? Yeah, I thought so. Ghazi had some good questions. The only critical thing I'd say about the interview is that it felt a bit rushed. That's fair because it actually was rushed. We did kind of have to move along we had to move along the questions. We couldn't sit on the topic for too long. Even though I was enjoying the conversation personally around strongholds, for instance, I did need to move the conversation along quicker. So we kind of had to we had to cut it Because if each question is 15 minutes, we would have only got the first 3, but we were able to get about 20 in. So I'll take it. Are you posting on YouTube today or later? The VOD is currently being uploaded to a Google Drive, which Ghazi will upload on the channel that was linked. There's also the live stream VOD that I have today, but you will have to pick through it to find it. And me and the editor are going to, after this live stream, record a recap video in which I do shorter synopses. So if you don't want to watch a full 45 minutes, there will be a recap video shortly after this stream ends. I'm going to sit down and record one with the editor in which will be like, I asked this. This was the response, and like paraphrase effectively. SSF coming. I think that was the one that maybe perhaps we could receive as the most information leaked, maybe. I mean, it said can't confirm anything, but we like it type of situation. So SSF sounds like it could be coming, yeah. Wish for more backfiring on the devs' bad takes, not like adding one button or expanding skill tree because players can't handle it. Mistakes. I don't think it matters what I think about what somebody else is saying. I think what matters is that you get to hear more questions related to what they think about questions you would ask if you had the chance. So I could be like, well, I think that's a dumb take. I think players can handle an ultimate button, but what do you, as the viewer, actually gain from me snapping back at him? You basically, instead of gaining something, you lose one additional question answer during that time. So I choose to not respond unless it's a critical point in which I was extremely curious, so I couldn't help myself, asking about, for instance, the Uber strongholds when we got into that conversation. Outside of that, I don't think it's really worth time like arguing with people, because I don't really think that I'm the one developing the game. Now, am I? The job's to pull information out, not try to teach him the job that he's doing, right? Which, I mean, he's the one doing the job, not me. I didn't go to school for game dev. So I actually do listen to what he says. Where's that poll? The poll is right here. Oh, hold on, that's Ghazi's link to the channel. Let me put this here. There's the poll. Joe says tons of people take every genre because they don't understand the skill tree as it is. Yeah, that's probably true. I think D4, you have to realize, has a much wider audience than any of the previous Diablo games. But I don't think they necessarily will stop progression of something like that just because some people don't know how the skill tree works. I'm sure that there will be continued progression. What was the name of the video he told us to go watch about the game dev? You'll have to back up to see it in the VOD. I don't actually remember the name of it. Trickiest bit of interviewing is active listening and not worrying about your next question. It took me a bit to stop doing that with my production brain. Yeah, you have to like listen and be able to follow up in order to actually have a good conversation. I agree that part can be difficult. There you go. Jim has the link to the curse prompts and game design. I'll link that on YouTube side of things too for the people that are curious over there. Sounds like the PvP folks need to speak up more. Yes, more what we want. So it sounds like they haven't been hearing. Yeah, I did ask for the PvP. I knew when I asking that half the people were going to be like, what a waste and stupid question for the people that don't give a fuck about PvP. But there's enough PvP players that, like, I wanted to get that one in there for you. I'm sorry that we weren't able to get, like, well, this is the next game mode coming. But, like, you know, you got what, if you guys really do care about PvP, it sounds like they're not getting enough feedback about that. So you need to put feedback in for that. That's what it sounds like. What was the feature you personally would like to see come to D4 and why? Just curious. That's a good question. Well, since we're on the PvP topic, the thing that immediately comes to my head is, you know how in Lost Ark there is a PvP arena that's like 1v1v1 basically. I think that is pretty phenomenal. I like that, like the elimination style. It'd be cool if you could create a character that's like level 100 maxed out gear, separate from like your actual one, and have only a PvP character that would go into a 1v1v1 arena. That would be pretty cool. Or like a MOBA style, or not MOBA, but like a battle right style where it drops you in, sort of like Plunderstorm. I think that would be pretty cool. But that's just because my brain's on PvP right now. How to submit feedback to Blizzard, their forums, Reddit posts, anywhere that stuff is heard, Discord. Didn't mention Mercenaries followers though. Yeah, I think that one had been covered already. We did go into pets. Yeah, balance issue is one problem with PvP as well, yeah. Your thoughts on D4 adding a new class? I think people would love to see a new class. I think that's pretty self-evident. A lot of people would love to see it. What about cow level answer he gave? Like, he said exactly what I said they would say, which is effectively, what's a cow level? We have no idea. Is the VOD available anywhere? The VOD is on YouTube as well as on Twitch. You can find it on both platforms. All right. Yeah, it's not plain stupid. That's the ongoing joke. Like so the cow level joke is it's an ongoing gag of basically you say like, what's a cow level? And then they say, oh, well, the cow level is this. That's effectively how it goes. There is no cow level. Yeah, exactly. You're frankly alive with the Prime. Thank you very much. Okay, so shout out to all the people that watch this on Twitch as well as YouTube. I appreciate you guys. We'll probably do more YouTube live streams going in the future and for the start of Season 4. If you have any interest in those, you can hit the bell. It will notify you when the live streams go live. They'd probably be right around the same time as we did this one today as well. I appreciate all the people that showed up. Pretty good amount of people that did show up today. Looks like most people enjoyed the interview. Thank you for all your questions and for helping tune the interview through the last 24 hours, as we did the previous one. Also, any questions on loadout, that was covered by Rax in his previous interview. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to go record a sort of highlights video talking about the recap of what we actually saw. And then from there, I will see you guys later. Thanks for everything. Appreciate you watching. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you on the recap video or on the next live stream. Don't forget you can watch just the interview raw cut out on Gazi's channel as well. Gazi TV on YouTube. That's about it. See y'all. I'm going to run the outro. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.